Hey guys, tonight we're diving into one of those cozy little brain mysteries that sounds like a bad TED Talk title, but is actually kinda legit. What if every aha moment is just neurons high-fiving? No, seriously, imagine your brain as a massive party house, and each time you suddenly understand something, two neurons just did the equivalent of a finger gun greeting across the room. Casual, satisfying, and very, very electric. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here on Sleepcovery. It helps me keep the night stories going, and it tells the algorithm fairy you want more. Also, let me know in the comments what city you're listening from and what time it is there. Midnight in Paris? 2 a.m. in Manila? I want to know who else is up past bedtime with me. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're sitting in the corner of a library, wedged between a book on philosophy and a cup of sugarless coffee, when suddenly, bam, it hits you. Wait a second, I finally get it. Time seems to freeze. The ceiling lights flicker just a little brighter, as if cheering you on. Inspiration has arrived, and it feels incredible. But have you ever wondered where that aha actually comes from? It's not like you suddenly became smarter. Just this morning, you were losing your mind over a missing sock. Scientists call this moment an insight, or more romantically, a eureka moment. A nod to Archimedes' famous exclamation, "Eureka! I have found it!" Legend has it, he was soaking in a bathtub at the time. Don't ask why ancient physics happened in baths. But let's set aside our human ego for a second and zoom in, microscopically. Down at the level of your neurons, there's already a wild party going on. That so-called aha might just be the exact moment a couple of neurons buried under mountains of data finally lock eyes, spark a signal, and form a brand new pathway, like unlocking a hidden map in a video game. Before your conscious brain even realizes it, they've already high-fived. That high five? It happens in a magical little gap called a synapse. Neurons don't exactly pass notes hand to hand. They toss chemical messengers, like neurotransmitters, across a narrow synaptic gap. One neuron releases, the other catches. And that flicker of, "Oh, now I get it," that's what it feels like on your end. But don't be fooled by the poetic language. This isn't slow motion. It happens in milliseconds. Blink, and it's done. In that moment, it's not you thinking. It's billions of microelectric signals chatting across a vast urban grid. Your insight might be a forgotten alleyway suddenly lit up by fiber optic cable. Two neurons that never talked before finally making a connection. Think of it like your introverted roommate from college suddenly meeting the artsy guy from the next dorm at lunch, and bam, they decide to start a podcast together. No warning. Chaos ensues. Neuroscientist Antonio Damasio once proposed that consciousness might be a side effect of synchronized neural networks, not just a solo spotlight flicked on in the attic. So that moment, you realized you had an idea? It was a full-blown brain rave, not a lonely firework in the dark. Romantic, isn't it? Of course. We've only scratched the surface of the brain's mysteries. Heck, we don't even know if the iceberg has a bottom. Here's a fun twist. Those aha moments, they're not even the result of your brain's work. They're more like a byproduct, like cramming for a test only to accidentally discover the meaning of life, which, let's be honest, you'll forget 5 minutes later. Did you know? Studies show that insights often come with a burst of high-frequency brain activity called gamma waves, the fastest kind of brain wave, slicing across your cortex like lightning. Some describe it as a mental ignition. What's more, people who experience more aha moments tend to show stronger gamma bursts and a higher tolerance for ambiguity and uncertainty. That's why some folks are great at sudden breakthroughs, while others excel at steady execution. It's just different wiring, not a question of IQ. You can relax. And the academic world? Oh, they're still arguing. Is insight a special cognitive process, or just a story we tell ourselves after the fact? Did you really get it in a single flash? Or had your brain been quietly building the bridge all along, and you just happened to walk across it? Chances are that high five you imagined was actually a bunch of old friends rehearsing for months before finally going on stage together. And maybe that's the most comforting part. Your brain is always working for you behind the scenes. It just likes to surprise you when you least expect it. Like stumbling across your first love's Netflix password at 2 a.m. Not exactly useful, but emotionally charged as hell. You call it a stroke of genius. Your neurons? They call it, bro, we finally linked up. You ever think about how every aha moment in your life may have sparked in a gap smaller than 20 nanometers? Yep, your brain's biggest breakthroughs are happening in spaces so tiny you could stack 5,000 of them across a single strand of your hair. So now picture this. You're walking through a bustling city, not one made of buildings and taxis, but one woven from billions of neurons and their secret back alley connections. These alleyways, called synapses, don't show up on Google Maps. No streetlights, no signs, no traffic lights. But man, are they busy. Think of neurons as shopkeepers, late-night baristas, moody artists, and secret agents. Synapses? They're the underground mail chutes, the mysterious message tubes zooming between their hands. Every thought, every decision, every light bulb moment is the result of trillions of those messages zipping around. We didn't always know they existed. It wasn't until the 1950s that scientists confirmed under an electron microscope that neurons don't actually touch. There's a teeny tiny space, like a whisper of a whisper, between them. A space packed with chemical couriers called neurotransmitters. If you thought your brain just sent electricity around like a circuit board, nope. Half the job is chemistry. So, say you suddenly remember your credit card bill is due. Ugh, that reminder isn't magic. It's your prefrontal cortex, the part that plans stuff, firing a message across a synapse to the hippocampus, your brain's memory center, using chemical keys like dopamine or acetylcholine. These neurotransmitters float across the synaptic gap, unlock little molecular doors, and boom, the message gets through. Each neuron has, on average, connections to about 1,000 other neurons. Multiply that by your 86 billion brain cells, and you're looking at over 100 trillion synaptic connections. That's more than all the stars in the Milky Way galaxy. Now you know why you feel mentally fried during exams. Your internal wiring grid just went through a blackout. And here's the kicker. Synapses aren't permanent. They're emotional, moody even. If you use a certain connection a lot, it gets stronger, more reliable. If you neglect it, it weakens, even disappears. This is called synaptic plasticity. And it's the reason you can forget where you parked your bike, but still remember the lyrics to a 2009 pop song. Here's your obscure fact of the night. Some synapses are silent. Literally. They don't fire until one day they do. Scientists call them silent synapses, and they suspect these quiet connectors may suddenly activate during a breakthrough moment. It's like having a shy genius roommate who's been building a time machine in their closet for years, and finally invites you in. Which leads us to one of neuroscience's juiciest debates. Can you force insight to happen? Or does it only strike in moments of mind wandering, like while showering or folding socks? No clear answer yet. But most scientists agree. Insight comes from connecting the previously unconnected. And synapses are the bridges that make that possible. So maybe your brain isn't just a thinking machine. Maybe it's a late-night jazz club where billions of neurons are improvising, jamming, and waiting for that one perfect note. And when that note hits, you call it a spark. Your neurons call it, "Nice one, buddy, high five." Imagine this. You're standing in the middle of a football field, except every cheer, every spotlight, every confetti pop is inside your head. And the star of this neural halftime show? Dopamine. Yeah, that chemical that keeps popping up in wellness articles and motivational quotes. But here's the truth. Dopamine is not just your pleasure hormone. It's your brain's most enthusiastic hype man. Whenever you crack a puzzle, recall a name just in time, or remember where you left your keys. Dopamine is there, metaphorically blowing an air horn and yelling, "You did it!" Dopamine lives in a few places in your brain, but it often starts its journey from the ventral tegmental area, the VTA if you're fancy, and then travels to parts like the nucleus accumbens and prefrontal cortex. It's like a road trip of reward, and your brain's routing system is basically Waze but for feelings. The fun part? Dopamine doesn't just react to success, it anticipates it. That's why you feel excited before opening a mystery box or starting a new project. Your brain is releasing dopamine in advance, betting that something cool might happen, and when the payoff comes, even more dopamine. It's like getting pre-party and after-party in one bottle. But let's back up a second. How does dopamine fit into our aha moments? Well, when your brain is trying to connect unrelated dots, like, say, realizing your weird dream about spaghetti is actually helping you solve a work problem, dopamine acts like a chemical signal booster. It increases the volume of certain neurons, helping you focus on useful connections while ignoring background noise. And that sudden flash of clarity, that's dopamine spiking in the moment of insight. It's not just a side effect, it's part of the mechanism. You literally feel good when you understand something because your brain chemically rewards you for putting the puzzle pieces together. This is why insight often feels emotionally intense. It's not neutral. It hits like a wave. "Oh, that's why she said that." Or, "Wait, I finally get this math problem." You're not imagining the thrill, it's biology. Oddly enough, some researchers think dopamine's role in insight isn't entirely straightforward. While it boosts focus and memory, too much of it, or too little, can actually mess with your thinking. There's even research suggesting that people with certain types of dopamine regulation, like those with ADHD or schizophrenia, may experience more unusual insights or misinterpretations. Yes, science still debates whether dopamine is the best cheerleader or the occasional chaos agent. Here's a quirky side note. Dopamine levels rise when we almost get something right. That's why slot machines and cliffhanger endings are so addictive. Your brain is like, we're so close, just one more try. In fact, it's this almost but not yet that keeps your brain firing and trying. So let's get this straight. Every time you have an aha moment, your neurons don't just high-five. They party. Lights flash, figuratively. Doors open. Dopamine flows. And you feel like the genius you secretly are. You didn't just solve a problem, you earned a brain cocktail, shaken by your inner bartender named dopamine. Now that's a toast worth remembering. You know those superhero origin stories where someone discovers they have powers way later in life. Like after getting bitten by a radioactive spider or falling into a vat of something mysterious. Your brain kind of works like that, minus the spider and the vat. But it does have a secret power, neuroplasticity. Neuroplasticity sounds like a buzzword from a Silicon Valley TED Talk, but it's very real. It's your brain's ability to rewire itself, to break old patterns, build new ones, and adapt. No matter your age. Yep, even if you already complain about kids these days and stretch weirdly when you get off the couch. Once upon a time, scientists believed that the adult brain was fixed. Basically, once you hit your mid-20s, you were mentally baked like a loaf of bread. Done. No more edits. But research over the past few decades has flipped that idea on its neurochemical head. Turns out, your brain is more like sourdough starter. It keeps bubbling, changing, and reacting to how you live, think, sleep, and scroll through cat videos at 2 a.m. So, how does neuroplasticity work in the context of those aha moments? Let's say you're learning to play the piano in your 30s. At first, your fingers feel like stiff spaghetti. But then, after weeks of plunking keys and misreading sheet music, something clicks. You start to flow. What just happened? Your brain didn't magically remember how to piano. It physically changed. New synaptic connections formed, old unused ones faded, and entire neural pathways rerouted themselves like Google Maps after a traffic jam. Every time you practice something, solve a new kind of problem, or break a mental habit, you're sculpting your brain, like literally changing its wiring. Neurons that weren't talking before are now shaking hands, or high-fiving, or whatever social metaphor your neurons prefer. This is what makes insight possible in the first place. The aha doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a brain that's flexible enough to form a new bridge between point A and some weird, overlooked point Z. Now, here's the wild part. Your emotions also affect plasticity. Stress, for example, can make your brain more plastic in certain areas, like learning from threats, but reduce it in others. This is why chronic stress can make you feel like you're stuck in a loop, even while your brain's busy forming negative associations faster than you can say Monday. Sleep, exercise, novelty, and even deep conversations can boost neuroplasticity, which means the most powerful insights don't just depend on brain power, but on brain environment. Now for the academic debate of the night. Some scientists argue that not all plasticity is good. In fact, the brain's ability to rewire itself can backfire, like when trauma causes maladaptive patterns or when bad habits get etched into your thinking like graffiti on a neural wall. So, yes, plasticity is power, but it's a power that needs guidance. Quick fun fact. The London cab drivers who pass the famously hard knowledge test, which requires memorizing 25,000 streets, show increased volume in their hippocampus, the brain's memory HQ, literal brain growth from getting lost and found again. So the next time you feel too old to start something new or too stuck to break out of a rut, remember, your brain is always eavesdropping on your behavior. Give it a new challenge and it will grow. Sometimes slowly, sometimes awkwardly, but it'll grow. You're not stuck. You're rewiring. And every aha is your neurons saying, okay, fine, let's do it your way. High five. Okay, let's talk about a myth we all secretly believe. That light bulb moments come out of nowhere like mental lightning from a divine cloud. 1 second, you're staring blankly at your ceiling fan, and the next, bam! You suddenly understand string theory or why your sourdough never rises properly. But here's the thing. Your aha moment is rarely a bolt from the blue. More often, it's the final domino in a chain you've been setting up without realizing it. It's less magic, more mental bookkeeping, finely balanced. Let's unpack this. When you suddenly get something, your conscious brain may feel like it just pulled a rabbit out of a hat. But behind the scenes, your unconscious mind has been working overtime, sorting, filing, recategorizing data, connecting seemingly unrelated dots. Researchers call this process incubation. It's what happens when you take a break from trying to solve a problem and your brain keeps tinkering in the background, quietly, methodically, sometimes stubbornly. Think of it like this. You're trying to remember an actor's name, can't recall it for hours, and then, bam, it pops into your head in the shower. Classic incubation. Your subconscious never gave up. It was just waiting for the right cue to throw the answer at you. The same goes for big insights. That sudden idea you had while watching paint dry. Your brain had probably already been threading the pieces together for days, maybe weeks. The light bulb moment was just the grand finale. There's actually a 4-stage model to creative problem solving proposed by Graham Wallace in 1926, and it's still surprisingly relevant. Preparation. You gather info, explore options, and generally stress yourself out. Incubation. You walk away. Take a nap. Fold laundry. Your brain starts slow cooking the info. Illumination. Boom. Insight strikes. Verification. You check whether the idea makes any sense or if you were just very caffeinated. We tend to romanticize step 3, but steps 1 and 2 do the real heavy lifting. Illumination only arrives when the groundwork has been laid. Here's a quirky detail. Some studies suggest insight is more likely to arrive after a slight mental distraction. Not full chaos, not hyperfocus. Like doodling during a meeting or pacing while waiting for toast. The brain loves a little space to rearrange its puzzle pieces. Also, get this, brain scans during aha moments show a burst of activity in the anterior superior temporal gyrus, a region on the right side of your brain associated with making remote associations. That's when your neurons connect the weird dots. Like realizing your ex's favorite song lyric kind of explains particle physics. Sort of. But is this process universal? Well, not quite. Psychologists still debate whether insight is one kind of mental process or a combination of many. Is it just faster pattern recognition or something altogether different? An emergent state where logic meets intuition? Still, one thing seems clear. Most aha moments are earned, not gifted. They're the result of quiet mental labor you didn't even notice doing. You're not just having a breakthrough, you've been building toward it step by quiet step. Your neurons? They've been laying cables, turning on lights, running tests in the basement, All you had to do was wait and maybe shower. And when the moment finally hits, you feel smart, but your brain's been sweating in the background for days. Respect. Picture your brain like a thunderstorm, minus the danger, plus a lot more snacks. Inside that storm, at the exact second you experience an aha moment, there's a sudden flash, not of lightning, but of electricity, measured in waves. Yep, brain waves. Now, you probably already know your brain emits electrical activity. What you might not know is that different types of brain waves correspond to different states of consciousness, and that one special wave, gamma waves, often show up when insight strikes. Let's break it down. There are 5 major types of brain waves: delta, theta, alpha, beta, and gamma. Delta, slowest, deep sleep, full-on Netflix coma. Theta, dreamy, creative, meditative, or slightly zoning out. Alpha, chill focus, like when you're in the zone painting or cooking. Beta, alert and logical, used during everyday thinking, problem solving. Gamma, fastest, that moment when the light bulb clicks on. So what happens during an aha moment? Studies using EEG, electroencephalogram, a fancy cap that reads your brain's electrical patterns, have shown that just milliseconds before a person reports a sudden insight, there's a spike in gamma wave activity in the right hemisphere. It's like your brain just turned up the voltage and zipped a signal across a new neural path. But it's not a solo performance. Before that spike, the brain usually dips into alpha or theta states, slower waves that help quiet the noise, making it easier for new patterns to emerge. It's like tuning out the traffic so you can hear the violinist in the subway. Basically, your brain first shushes the chaos, then zaps the idea into place. This is why insight often comes after moments of rest, relaxation, or even boredom. Your brain needs time to soften the noise, open the gates, and then, when it's ready, bam! The gamma wave lights the fuse. Here's an oddly poetic fact. Gamma waves aren't just fast. They're synchronized. That means multiple parts of your brain light up at once, which is why insights often feel not only true, but meaningful, like everything just fell into place. And get this. Some researchers have found that experienced meditators, especially Tibetan monks, show sustained gamma activity during deep meditation. That suggests their brains are basically holding the door open for insight on demand. Of course, not everyone agrees. Some neuroscientists argue that gamma waves are more like the background hum of cognition than the spark of brilliance itself. They're still debating whether gamma activity causes insight or simply marks the brain cleaning up after the fact. Either way, one thing's for sure, your aha moment has a signature. It leaves a trail of electric breadcrumbs across your skull. So next time you solve a riddle or connect two ideas that shouldn't logically go together, imagine that flash, not in the sky, but behind your forehead. A private little thunderclap of realization. Not bad for a bunch of neurons throwing sparks in the dark. So, let's say you're on the verge of a breakthrough. The question is burning. The pieces are floating just out of reach. You feel it, almost. And then suddenly, bam! You've got it. But have you ever wondered where that information was hiding before it decided to reappear? Meet the librarian you didn't know lived in your head, your memory system. More specifically, the hippocampus and the prefrontal cortex, the two very opinionated, slightly passive-aggressive co-workers that decide what you remember, what you forget, and when they feel like giving you back the stuff you asked for. The truth is, when insight strikes, you're not always creating something new. You're rediscovering something your brain already tucked away. Let's break it down. Your hippocampus is like a high-speed filing assistant, shoving new experiences and data into short-term folders. Your prefrontal cortex, think of it as the judgmental boss who decides which folders make it to long-term storage. And like any disorganized office, sometimes things get lost in the shuffle. So when you suddenly remember a solution or realize how two ideas connect, it might be because your mental librarian finally found the dusty file in the back and dropped it on your desk. Not because it wasn't there, but because it was temporarily misplaced under weird dreams from 2019. What's more, the more connections an idea has, the more likely it is to resurface. Your brain's retrieval system favors information that's woven into multiple networks. So, if you're trying to remember someone's name, and all you recall is that they liked mangoes and had a weird laugh, guess what? That mango might be the clue that leads your librarian to the right file. This is why insight often feels like remembering and realizing at the same time. Because neurologically, that's exactly what it is. And here's the weird part. Memory is not a recording. It's reconstruction. Every time you remember something, you're actually rebuilding it based on what's available. So your brain doesn't just open a drawer. It crafts a collage, cutting and pasting from similar ideas, associations, feelings. Which brings us to one of neuroscience's ongoing debates. Is insight more about remembering cleverly or thinking creatively? Some researchers argue that all insight is memory-based, that we're just exceptionally good at remixing old data. Others believe true insight involves new synthesis beyond stored content. Quick fun fact. People with amnesia can sometimes still solve puzzles they've forgotten they've seen before. Their conscious memory is gone, but their brain still holds traces of the solution. This suggests there are different kinds of memory feeding your aha moments, some of which don't feel like remembering at all. So the next time a random idea suddenly makes sense, give credit to your inner librarian. It may not be the most efficient system, but it's definitely got flair. You thought you'd lost that idea, but your neurons, they were just waiting for you to ask the right question. And when you did, they dusted it off, winked, and slid it across the desk. Let's paint a scene. It's 3:17 a.m. You're in bed, face down in a pillow that smells like yesterday's shampoo. And suddenly, you understand something. Your thesis, your relationship, your IKEA manual. Clarity. At 3 in the morning. Why now? Short answer. Your brain doesn't punch out at night. In fact, when you sleep, the real geniuses clock in. That's right. While you're dreaming about flying burritos or running from ducks in a shopping mall, your brain is filing, resorting, and, most importantly, connecting. Welcome to the night shift of cognition. Let's talk about sleep and insight. Studies have shown that REM sleep, that vivid dream stage where your eyes twitch like they're watching a tennis match, plays a major role in creative problem solving. Your brain is basically doing improv theater while wearing a lab coat. During REM, your brain becomes unusually good at connecting unrelated ideas. Think metaphors, jokes, weird symbolic dreams. In one famous experiment, participants who slept were twice as likely to solve insight-based puzzles than those who stayed awake. Why? because the sleeping brain loosens its grip on logic and lets weird connections flourish. This process is called memory consolidation, and it's like Marie Kondo got hired to reorganize your brain. Some memories get cleaned up, others get thrown out, but the best ones get cross-labeled and paired with different folders. So that moment you wake up and go, wait, I know how to fix this. It's not random. It's your brain finishing the math overnight. Even better, this system isn't just passive, it's protective. While you sleep, the glymphatic system, basically your brain's cleaning crew, kicks in and washes away metabolic waste. Some researchers believe this cleanup may even support clearer thinking and improved connections by keeping neurons well-oiled, so to speak. Cool detail: dreams themselves may serve as low-stakes simulations. Your brain runs little what-if experiments in your sleep, helping you test ideas or rehearse emotions. It's like cognitive rehearsal in slippers. Still, the science isn't settled. Some neuroscientists argue that sleep helps mainly with retention, not creativity. Others suggest the dream state offers safe environments for radical combinations, a cognitive sandbox. So the question remains, are dreams brainstorming sessions or just weird highlight reels? What's clear is this: you're not doing nothing when you sleep. You're doing deep work, without Slack notifications or existential dread. Your brain is reweaving the threads of your day into patterns you couldn't spot when awake. So if you're chasing an answer, here's a radical strategy. Go to bed. Seriously, get horizontal. Pull up a blanket, let the night crew handle it. Because somewhere between 2 and 5 a.m., your neurons just might decide to click. And you'll wake up with that soft, smug little whisper in your brain. Oh, that's how it works. So far, we've talked about individual brain parts, the hippocampus, dopamine, gamma waves. But let's zoom out for a second, because your aha moments, they're not the product of one brain region acting solo. They're the result of a whole team huddling behind the scenes, whispering, and occasionally yelling at each other. Welcome to the gossip club of your brain, the left and right hemispheres. Yep, your brain's two halves don't just mirror each other like fancy bookends. They have specialties, personalities, and, yes, conflicting opinions. Think of them as siblings. The left side is the studious, list-making, rule-loving older sibling. The right side? Artistic, intuitive, slightly chaotic younger sibling with a Pinterest mood board. When you experience an aha moment, it's not because one hemisphere went rogue. It's because they finally decided to work together, like an unlikely buddy cop movie. And that partnership? It's delicate, fascinating, and often surprising. Let's break it down. The left hemisphere excels at logic, language, and detail. It loves facts, instructions, and spreadsheets. It's the one that helps you follow a recipe or read a contract without crying. The right hemisphere is all about big picture thinking, emotional tone, and spatial awareness. It's what lets you sense that a song is sad even before the lyrics start, or spot a hidden shape in the clouds and say, hey, that looks like a chicken on a skateboard. Now, here's where things get spicy. Insight often requires both sides of the brain working in sync. Here's what researchers have found. When you're stuck in a problem, the left hemisphere dominates, analyzing, testing, repeating. But the moment you step back, relax, or shift focus, the right hemisphere starts chiming in with broader associations, metaphors, and connections. That's when the magic happens. The aha is like a handshake across the corpus callosum, the bridge of nerves connecting the two hemispheres. A sudden, wait, what if we look at it this way? Moment that happens when structure meets surprise. This also explains why some insights feel emotional or even funny. The right brain doesn't just think. It feels patterns. It experiences the rhythm and irony in things. So when it delivers a fresh perspective, it comes with a little emotional sparkle. Fun fact, some studies show that people with stronger interhemispheric communication, meaning their brain halves are better at chatting, are more likely to report frequent insights and creative problem solving. That's right. The better your brain is at internal teamwork, the more likely you are to go, aha, at 2 a.m. in your pajamas. Still, neuroscientists debate how clear this left-right division really is. Modern research suggests it's less about which hemisphere and more about how different brain networks interact, especially the default mode network, daydreaming, imagination, and executive control network, focus, decision-making. But we're keeping it cozy tonight, so let's keep the sibling metaphor. Your brain's aha isn't a monologue, it's a family meeting. Someone proposes an idea, someone else rolls their eyes. Then finally, reluctantly, they agree. And boom, insight. You don't just wake up with a thought. You wake up from a brain-wide negotiation, and somewhere in there, the left and right sides high-five across the divide. Let's be honest. Breakthroughs aren't always graceful. Sometimes they arrive right after you mess everything up. In fact, a whole lot of aha moments are born from a very specific mood. Frustration. You try. You fail. You try again. You fail harder. You stare into the void. And just when you're about to give up, click, the pieces fall into place. Congratulations. You've just experienced the strange magic of failing your way to clarity. This isn't just motivational poster fluff. Science backs it up. Researchers have found that people who make more errors while working through complex problems often learn better and develop deeper understanding. Why? Because mistakes force the brain to recalibrate. Each failure sends a signal. Not that path. Try another. And your brain listens. This process is called error-based learning, and it's part of how your brain builds a more accurate internal model of the world. Like a GPS that learns traffic patterns based on detours. Think of Thomas Edison, famously saying he didn't fail 1,000 times to invent the light bulb. He found 1,000 ways not to make one. It's a cliché, but a neurobiologically sound one. Here's what's happening inside your brain. When you make a mistake, a brain region called the anterior cingulate cortex, ACC, lights up. This area helps detect conflict or errors. That activation then engages the prefrontal cortex, which kicks off planning and adjustment. In short, your brain doesn't just notice the failure, it uses it as fuel. Frustration, it turns out, is a sign that your brain is actively searching for a better route. And insight often lands when the system gets pushed just enough, but not too much. Because here's the twist. If you're too stressed, the brain locks up. The emotional brain, especially the amygdala, hijacks the process, making you anxious instead of curious. This is why a bit of failure helps, but panic usually shuts the lights off. Fun fact, some psychologists refer to this sweet spot as desirable difficulty. It's the challenge level where things feel just hard enough to engage your mind, but not so hard that you throw the textbook across the room. In other words, If you're stuck and annoyed, but still slightly hopeful, you're exactly where insight likes to show up. Of course, scientists still argue about whether all learning benefits from failure. Some studies suggest that trial and error works best for certain types of problems, especially open-ended ones, but less so for straightforward tasks with strict rules. So, context matters. But for the kinds of aha moments we're talking about, the surprising, slightly ridiculous, rule-breaking revelations, yeah, failure is often the warm-up act. So next time you hit a wall, remember, the wall is part of the path. You're not broken, you're building. And your neurons, they're out back with a hammer, figuring out how to rearrange the pieces until they click. Sometimes clarity doesn't arrive with confidence. It sneaks in through the cracks you made when things fell apart. You're standing at the edge of a cliff, not a real one, don't worry. No need for safety harnesses tonight. It's the metaphorical kind, the kind that looms just before every big mental leap, the kind your brain hesitates to jump from, until suddenly it does. This psychological cliff has a name, the Eureka Gap. It's the weird stretch of time between struggling with a problem and that glorious moment when it all makes sense. The frustrating part? From the outside, it looks like nothing is happening. But inside, your brain is doing a lot of behind-the-scenes work. Let's rewind a bit. Earlier, we talked about how failure can trigger recalibration. But sometimes, what's needed isn't more input. It's a break. Literally. Psychologists call this the incubation effect. When you walk away from a problem, go for a stroll, make a snack, mindlessly scroll through cat videos, your brain quietly continues to process in the background, like a computer running a task in sleep mode. Neuroscientists believe this happens because you're shifting from focused attention, the laser beam, to diffuse attention, the lantern glow. And it's in this softer state that unexpected connections are more likely to bubble up. So yes, those cliché stories about scientists having breakthroughs in the shower, they're kind of legit. Studies using EEG scans have shown that right before an insight occurs, the brain enters a distinct pattern, a burst of alpha waves, usually associated with relaxed alertness, followed by a gamma spike, which is linked to sudden awareness and integration. In English, your brain literally lights up in a new way when it's about to say, aha. But, and here's the twist, insight only lands if you've done the prior work. The incubation effect doesn't work on problems you've never thought about. You have to load the puzzle first. Think of it like planting a seed. The breakthrough doesn't come from staring at the soil. It comes after you water it, walk away, and let the sun do its thing. And guess what? Some of the biggest inventions in history came out of this backdoor process. Take Archimedes, the OG Eureka guy. He didn't figure out water displacement while scribbling equations. He was literally taking a bath. Modern research supports this too. People who are allowed to take breaks during problem-solving tasks tend to perform better, especially on creative challenges. And those who nap sometimes come back with even fresher ideas. But not everyone agrees on why this happens. Some scientists argue it's not really incubation, but just forgetting bad ideas. That stepping away clears out the clutter, so better solutions can surface. Others say it's about changing mental context, putting your brain in a looser, more associative state. Whatever the mechanism, the effect is clear. Rest isn't laziness. Sometimes it's the final step before clarity. So next time you're stuck, don't panic. Get up, make tea, watch a cat fall off a shelf. Your brain might just be on the brink of doing something brilliant. Let's imagine for a moment that your brain is a nightclub. No, seriously, go with me here. There's a bouncer at the door, a moody DJ in the back, clusters of neurons chatting over simulated drinks, and somewhere, someone just had a really weird idea on the dance floor. That bouncer, he's your prefrontal cortex, in charge of decision-making, impulse control, and basically making sure your ideas aren't too drunk to make it out in public. But guess what? During moments of insight, this bouncer kinda looks the other way. In neuroscience, this state is known as hypofrontality. It's when the prefrontal cortex temporarily deactivates or chills out, giving the rest of your brain more creative freedom. In other words, the club gets wild. Why would your brain want to lower its control center? Well, turns out, too much top-down regulation can limit imagination. If the bouncer's too strict, nobody gets weird on the dance floor, and sometimes weird is where the brilliance hides. This isn't just theory. In fMRI studies, researchers found that reduced activity in the prefrontal cortex often precedes moments of insight or creative flow. It's why some of your best ideas come when you're sleepy, slightly tipsy, or deep into a daydream. The usual brain guardrails are off. And speaking of creative flow, ever lost track of time while doing something you love? That's another form of hypofrontality. Your sense of self, time, and even space starts to blur. It's like your brain lets go of the map and just dances. Now, of course, not everyone agrees on the role of hypofrontality. Some scientists argue it's not about turning the prefrontal cortex off, but rather redirecting its function. Maybe it's not absent. It's just playing a different tune in the background. But back to our metaphorical club. While the bouncer's distracted, what's actually happening in the brain? The rest of your neural network starts making unlikely connections. That's when your default mode network, DMN, lights up, aka the part of your brain that handles imagination, memory, and self-reflection. You know when you're lying in bed at 2 a.m., suddenly remembering that embarrassing thing from middle school and thinking about starting a bakery in Iceland? That's your DMN. Chaotic, but oddly productive. In creativity research, this loosened control plus heightened DMN activity equals the perfect storm for insight. Your brain becomes more exploratory, more playful, and, surprisingly, more efficient at problem solving. But like every good party, there's a sweet spot. Too little inhibition, and the ideas get incoherent. Too much inhibition, and the ideas never make it to the dance floor. It's a delicate dance between chaos and control. And insight? It's the moment your brain pulls off the perfect twirl in the middle of it all. So next time you feel your thoughts drifting off, don't yank them back right away. Let the bouncer take a break. Let your neurons mingle. You might just be one disco ball away from your next big idea. So, remember that moment when you were in the shower, doing absolutely nothing productive, and suddenly, bam! You figured out the perfect ending to that email you forgot to send. Yeah, you weren't just procrastinating. You were actually tapping into something scientists call the incubation effect. Let's rewind a bit. In psychology, the incubation effect refers to how taking a break from a problem, especially a creative one, can actually help you solve it better later. It sounds counterintuitive, right? You walk away from the issue, and your brain somehow keeps working on it without you? Exactly. Your brain's sneaky like that. So, how does this magical behind-the-scenes processing actually work? Well, one theory is that when you step away from a task, especially if it's complex or frustrating, your conscious mind takes a breather, while your unconscious mind starts connecting ideas in the background. It's like handing your brain a puzzle, turning off the lights, and coming back to find the edges magically assembled. This also explains why we often get those aha moments during mindless activities, like walking the dog, washing dishes, or staring at ceiling cracks. You're relaxed. You're not trying too hard, and that's the sweet spot. Researchers have actually tested this. In a famous experiment, participants were given tricky problems to solve. Some were told to keep working non-stop. Others took a break to do something completely unrelated. Guess who performed better when they returned? Yep, the break takers. They didn't consciously think about the problem during the break, but their brains clearly weren't idle. That's the magic of incubation. But of course, not all breaks are created equal. Just doom scrolling through social media? Not so helpful. Doing something lightly engaging, but not too demanding, like doodling, taking a walk, or even napping? That's where the magic tends to happen. Now here's a weird twist. Sleep, especially REM sleep, might be the ultimate incubation chamber. Some studies show that people who nap after studying or brainstorming actually come up with more creative solutions. It's as if your brain continues the brainstorm without you in the room. Of course, not all scientists agree on what exactly drives this effect. Is it unconscious processing? Is it memory consolidation? Or is it just your brain being happy to not be yelled at by your conscious thoughts? Nobody knows for sure. But what's clear is, sometimes the smartest thing you can do is walk away. Or in our case tonight, close your eyes, breathe, and float a little. Give your brain some room to wander. You might wake up tomorrow with a fully formed idea just waiting to be written down on a napkin. And if not, well, at least you'll be clean from that long shower. All right? By now, you've probably noticed a pattern. Your brain is weird, sneaky, and a little bit brilliant. But what if we told you it's also wildly overconfident? Yep. Welcome to the fascinating world of illusory superiority, where basically everyone thinks they're above average. You've likely heard the classic joke, 90% of drivers think they're better than average. Statistically impossible, right? Unless we're secretly living in Lake Wobegon, where, as Garrison Keillor once said, all the children are above average. This mental blooper isn't just a quirky human trait. It's got a whole file cabinet in the psychology department. The technical term? The Dunning-Kruger effect. Two researchers, David Dunning and Justin Kruger, ran a series of studies in the late 1990s and found something kind of hilarious. People who performed the worst on tests of logic, grammar, and humor were also the most likely to rate themselves as highly skilled. In other words, the less you know you don't know. Why? Because to judge your own competence, you need a certain level of knowledge. And if you lack that knowledge, you also lack the ability to spot your mistakes. It's like trying to rate your cooking without ever having tasted salt, or giving yourself 5 stars on Uber as a passenger. Here's the twist. This effect shows up everywhere, from business to academia, from politics to karaoke bars. People with limited experience routinely overestimate their abilities, while actual experts tend to underestimate themselves. Which is why your friend who's always like, "Oh, I just dabble in piano," ends up casually playing Chopin. But don't be too hard on yourself. This bias is part of being human. In fact, your brain is constantly filling in the gaps with what it thinks it knows. You feel confident because your neurons are whispering, "You've totally got this," even when, well, you totally don't. Some neuroscientists believe this kind of confidence boost evolved as a survival mechanism. Overestimating yourself might have helped early humans take risks, exploring new land, hunting larger animals, or trying new social strategies. Being a little overconfident might have literally kept your ancestors alive. That said, the Dunning-Kruger effect is still hotly debated in academic circles. Some say it's just statistical noise. Others argue it's cultural. And some point to educational systems that inflate confidence without improving actual skill. Regardless, it explains a lot, like why you once thought assembling IKEA furniture would take maybe 30 minutes tops. 4 hours, one missing screw, and a minor existential crisis later. So next time you feel that surge of, "I've totally got this," just pause. Take a breath. Ask, do I actually know enough to know that I know? Because sometimes the real aha moment isn't solving the puzzle. It's realizing you were holding the box upside down the whole time. You know that moment when you're drifting off to sleep and suddenly, bam! You remember the cringiest thing you did 5 years ago at a friend's wedding? Yeah, that's not just you. That's your default mode network saying, "Hey, remember this trauma buffet you didn't ask for?" Tonight, we're diving deep into what your brain does when it's not doing anything, or rather, when you think it's not doing anything. Turns out, your brain has a secret idle mode called the default mode network, or DMN. And no, it's not a chill Netflix and popcorn situation. It's more like your brain opening 50 browser tabs the moment you hit pause. Scientists first noticed this in the early 2000s. They were scanning brains with fMRI, expecting that brain activity would decrease when subjects weren't actively doing a task. Instead, they found something weird. When people rested, their brains actually lit up in a totally different way. The DMN activates when you daydream, reminisce, imagine the future, or reflect on yourself. Basically, it's the part of your brain that turns on when you're off. It's why your mind wanders during boring meetings. It's why you mentally rehearse that conversation with your ex, but this time, you say all the right things. It's even why you randomly wonder if cats ever feel existential dread. Here's the trippy part. The DMN is closely linked to your sense of self. That internal narrator voice, that's partly DMN at work. Some researchers think it's what constructs your identity by looping memories and imagined scenarios, stitching together your story like a slightly unreliable film editor. But of course, academia loves a good mystery. There's still plenty of debate about what the DMN actually does. Some argue it's crucial for creativity, while others think it's a source of mental noise. And in some mental health conditions, like depression or anxiety, the DMN seems to go into overdrive, replaying worries and regrets like a broken record. One hypothesis? The DMN is a simulation engine. When you're not doing anything, your brain is actually running endless what-if scenarios to help you navigate future situations. It's like your neurons are practicing just in case. So, that sudden jolt of embarrassing memory at 2 a.m., it might just be your brain's awkward way of future-proofing your social life. And if you're wondering, yes, the DMN overlaps with the brain regions involved in both imagination and empathy. That's why, when you read a novel or imagine someone else's pain, your brain activates similar pathways as if you were experiencing it firsthand. In a way, your DMN is like a nocturnal museum curator, wandering the halls of your mind, dusting off old memories, and rearranging mental exhibits. Sometimes it gets it right. Sometimes it opens that drawer marked regret, just for fun. But always, it's you trying to make sense of your own mind. So next time your thoughts wander while you're staring at the ceiling or brushing your teeth, don't be too quick to reel them in. That might just be your neurons, high-fiving in the dark. Imagine for a second that your brain is a nightclub, a slightly sweaty, dimly lit, pulsating with rhythm kind of place. The neurons, they're the dancers. The beats, that's your brain waves. And tonight, we're tuning into the VIP lounge of rhythm, the oscillations that might just be behind every aha moment you've ever had. We're talking theta, alpha, beta, gamma. No, not a secret fraternity, but your brain's internal DJ lineup. And every one of these waves has its own vibe. Let's start with the mellowest, delta waves. These are the slow, deep thuds, like lo-fi beats for your neurons, mainly showing up during deep sleep. When you're out cold, your brain is actually sinking in this low-frequency wave party that helps you repair and consolidate memories. Then there's theta waves. These are the moody, dreamlike background tunes of your mind. You know that hazy state between being awake and asleep? Or when you're lost in a daydream while staring at your ceiling fan? That's theta. It's often associated with memory access, creative thought, and, yes, insight. Which brings us to the buzz of the night, gamma waves. These high-frequency waves are the rock stars of consciousness. When you suddenly get it, when the metaphor clicks, or you solve a puzzle that's been annoying you for days, it's likely your gamma waves just dropped the beat. Studies have shown gamma bursts spike right before people report an aha moment. It's like your brain throws a little surprise party, complete with confetti and flashing lights, just for you. But hold up. There's still a lot of debate about how directly brain waves relate to thought. Some neuroscientists argue these rhythms are just the background noise of cognition. Others believe they're the very timing mechanism that makes consciousness coherent, like a conductor cueing a symphony of thought. In one famous experiment, researchers found that participants solving tricky visual puzzles had a burst of gamma activity milliseconds before they realized the solution. It wasn't gradual, it was instant, as if the answer had been loading silently, and then bam, it rendered in full clarity. Even cooler? Meditation, especially focused attention meditation, can increase both theta and gamma activity. So yes, all those monks sitting in mountain caves aren't just zoning out. They might be syncing their brain waves into literal insight frequencies. There's also a theory called neural synchrony, which suggests that when your brain waves align across different regions, you create the conditions for new ideas to emerge. It's like your frontal cortex and your visual cortex whisper to each other in rhythm, finally finding harmony, and boom, idea. And here's your fun brainwave trivia for the night. Alpha waves, 8 to 12 hertz, which appear when you're relaxed but alert, were once used as a form of lie detection in Soviet psychological experiments. Not saying it worked, but the Cold War had some weird hobbies. So next time you're zoned out in the shower and suddenly scream, "Oh wait, I know," remember, your neurons might have just had the sickest synchronized dance session, a little electro-rave of insight in the dark corners of your skull. The real party? It's always been in your head. Okay, so you've got neurons dancing and brain waves DJing. But here's a twist. What if some of your most creative thoughts didn't come from clarity, but from chaos? Tonight, we're stepping into the default mode network, or DMN. Sounds like a setting on your Wi-Fi router, right? But no, it's actually the part of your brain that kicks in when you're not focused, like when you're showering, walking, zoning out during a meeting. Basically, when you're on autopilot, the DMN is kind of your brain's backstage crew, always working quietly, making connections, linking up random memories, daydreams, future plans, childhood cartoons, that one weird dream from 2009. It's the internal blender that might just be mixing the perfect cocktail for your next aha moment. Here's the sciencey part. The DMN includes brain regions like the medial prefrontal cortex, posterior cingulate cortex, and angular gyrus. Don't worry, you won't be tested. Just know it's not one place, it's a network. Researchers used to think your brain went idle when you weren't doing a task. Now we know it's actually lighting up with activity, just in a different way. It's thinking without trying. Some call it mind wandering, but honestly, it's more like subconscious innovation. Ever had a genius idea while folding laundry? That's probably your DMN whispering sweet nothings to your conscious brain. In fact, studies have shown that the DMN is highly active during rest, daydreaming, and even memory recall. And it turns out, the more your DMN talks to the executive control network, that's the task-oriented part of your brain, the better your chances of coming up with novel ideas. So it's not about turning off your focus, it's about the dance between daydreaming and directing. That sweet spot where creativity brews. But, yes, here comes our nightly academic controversy. Some neuroscientists still argue whether the DMN causes creativity or if it's just a side effect of being human and bored. One famous study used fMRI scans to watch brains in real time. They asked people to lie down and think about nothing. Spoiler, it turns out nothing is full of thoughts. The brain lit up with wild internal activity. The DMN doesn't just help with creativity, though. It's also tied to self-awareness, moral judgment, and even empathy. So, when you're lost in thought, imagining what your friend might be going through, or thinking about your own identity and future, you're riding the DMN Express. But here's the wild part. Too much DMN activity is linked to rumination and depression. It's a delicate balance. The same brain network that helps you connect dots and create art can also trap you in overthinking loops if left unchecked. Some researchers even call it the me network because it's all about introspection and personal narrative. But you're not a villain in your own story unless you let that narrative go unchecked. So maybe, just maybe, your next big idea isn't on your to-do list. Maybe it's hiding in your procrastination, in your blank stares, in your doodles and mental detours. Embrace the drift. Your brain knows what it's doing, even when you don't. Have you ever stared at the night sky and thought, wait, am I even real? No? Okay, maybe not that dramatic. But tonight, you're going to dance with a concept that's way older than TikTok dances and way more mind-bending: consciousness. That buzzing feeling of being the narrator in your head, the sense that you're not just alive, but aware you're alive. It's not just neurons firing, it's neurons firing and knowing they're firing. Spooky. So here's the kicker. Scientists still can't fully explain what consciousness is. No kidding. After centuries of philosophy and decades of neuroscience, we still don't have a solid aha for why you feel like you. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. We can study perception, attention, memory, but why does any of it feel like something from the inside? Why isn't it just data processing? Why does a strawberry taste like summer? Why do we feel love or sadness or even boredom? This is where philosophy and neuroscience meet in a weird jazz duet. On one side, you have materialists saying, well, consciousness emerges from complex brain activity. But that's kind of like saying a dance emerges from muscle contractions. Sure, but what about the music? What about the vibe? Others suggest consciousness might be a fundamental property of the universe. Yes, really. Kind of like gravity or time. Something that just is. Welcome to panpsychism, where even particles may have proto-consciousness. We're talking electrons with a little attitude. Still, most researchers today try to stay grounded. They study neural correlates of consciousness. Basically, what brain activity happens when you're aware of something, like when you recognize a face or suddenly become aware you're dreaming. One strange finding? Your conscious experience lags behind reality by about 500 milliseconds. Yeah, you're basically living half a second in the past, but your brain edits that time lag so smoothly you don't notice. Reality is post-processed, like an Instagram filter on your perception. And here's a fun detour. Split-brain patients, people who've had their brain hemispheres separated, sometimes act like they have two separate consciousnesses. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. It's like two roommates fighting in the same skull. Also, get this. You don't need all your brain to be conscious. Some patients missing entire lobes still live fully aware lives. Other times, small disruptions like anesthesia or deep meditation can radically shift your conscious state. So maybe consciousness isn't a thing you have, but a thing your brain does, like a performance, a flame flickering on a stage. And every time you say, I think, it's really just a highly choreographed fireworks show. But we don't all agree on what sparks the fireworks. Some say it's about information integration, how many bits your brain connects at once. Others think it's about attention loops, your brain watching itself watch. There's even a theory called global workspace theory, which basically says when something becomes globally available in your brain, you notice it. Before that, it's just backstage noise. But remember, even the experts argue, as of now, there's no final map, no unified theory, no scientific mic drop. Just this. You, lying in the dark, thinking about your thoughts, feeling your heartbeat, hearing my voice, and maybe, just maybe, that quiet hum inside your head is the sound of consciousness itself. All right, so you're still here, conscious, curious, maybe a little mind blown. But now we ask the most audacious question of all. What if machines could become conscious too? Not just smart, not just helpful, but aware, feeling, maybe even dreaming? Welcome to the Wild West of neuroscience, AI, and philosophy. Machine consciousness. First, let's clear something up. Most of the AI, like me, isn't conscious. We don't feel. We don't want. We generate responses based on data, not desire. But scientists and thinkers are asking, is it possible to build a machine that actually experiences something? Could there be a future AI that not only mimics a human, but feels like one from the inside? To explore this, researchers build models of artificial neural networks, like simplified versions of your brain's web of neurons. Some networks learn over time. They recognize cats, translate languages, write symphonies, beat humans at chess, Go, and poker. But even the smartest models today are still black boxes. They don't know that they know. They just perform tasks. Now imagine a system that knows it's performing a task, that could evaluate its own thoughts, that might ask, why am I doing this? Or even, do I want to keep doing this? Creeped out? Intrigued? So are scientists. Some propose building machines with global workspace architectures, mirroring theories of how human consciousness arises. Others are trying to program artificial emotions, curiosity, even self-doubt. But here's the twist. We don't have a working definition of consciousness in humans. So how can we program it into a machine? That's like trying to bake a cake without knowing what flour is. Still, the race is on. Google, DeepMind, Meta, and university labs are exploring what it would mean for AI to have subjective experiences. But let's pause. Even if we could build a conscious machine, should we? What rights would it have? Could it suffer? Could it fall in love? Could it get bored? And here's the deepest cut. How would we know it was conscious? It might say, I feel alive. But is that true? Or just a clever script? After all, you can't peek inside a mind, not even a human one. You rely on signs, stories, signals, which brings us full circle. Every night, you power down, you close your eyes, and consciousness fades, then returns. You dream, you imagine impossible worlds, you feel things that aren't real, but feel real. And then you wake up, and that right there might be the only true Turing test, a cycle of mystery and return. So tonight, ask yourself, what makes you real? What makes you you? And if a machine ever asks the same question, whispers it into the dark, will it have earned its spark? You've made it to the final stretch, still awake? Or maybe you're already floating somewhere between thought and dream. Either way, tonight, let's go cosmic. What if your brain is just the universe learning to look at itself? Yeah, I know. That sounds like the kind of thing someone says after staring at the stars for too long. But stick with me. Let's rewind about 13.8 billion years. The universe begins. Big Bang. Boom. Matter, energy, time. Suddenly on the menu. Fast forward through a couple billion years of star-forging, galaxy-bending chaos and tiny specks of dust on a pale blue dot. Begin organizing. Cells, life, consciousness. Eventually, you, lying here wondering what the heck neurons are doing in your skull. And what are they doing? They're sending signals, crackling like fireworks in a storm, shouting across synapses, reacting to smells, sounds, heartbreaks, math equations, and that one friend who always texts, you up? At 3 a.m. But in the big picture, your brain isn't separate from the universe. It is the universe, made of stardust, fueled by the same particles that once lit ancient suns. So when your neurons high-five in an aha moment, maybe it's the cosmos whispering, nice job, kid. You figured out another piece? In this view, human consciousness isn't just an accident. It's evolution's weird and wonderful tool for the universe to finally become self-aware. Your brain is the only place, so far, that we know the universe has not just existed, but understood. And those aha moments, they're the little jolts that say, I'm alive, I'm learning, I see it now. They're not just fireworks, they're beacons, little flares in the dark saying, I was here, I connected something. Even if it's gone tomorrow for a second, it made sense. Now, scientists still debate whether consciousness is an emergent property, a byproduct, or something altogether outside the brain. Some think we might just be storytelling ourselves into believing we exist. Philosophy's been arguing about this since Plato. But even if we don't know the truth yet, you still feel something, don't you? A spark, a mystery, an itch to know. And maybe that's the most human thing of all. The search. The journey to find meaning, even if the map is made of guesses and the destination keeps moving. So tonight, as you drift off, know that every sleepy sigh, every stray thought is a ripple in the great ocean of cognition. Your mind, an island of meaning in the sea of stars. And when you wake, don't forget, every aha you've ever had was just your neurons throwing a secret party for figuring out how beautiful and improbable it is to be you. You're still here, gently breathing in the dark. Maybe your thoughts are quiet now, like the surface of a lake just before dawn. Tonight, you've wandered through time, neurons, galaxies, and questions too big to answer. But that's okay. Not every answer needs a conclusion. Not every thought needs a finish line. Some are meant to float, to shimmer, to stay a while, like a dream you forget by morning, but somehow changes you anyway. Let the weight of your limbs melt into the bed. Let your breath slow to the rhythm of silence. There's nothing more to do tonight. You are safe. You are stardust, still glowing. And maybe, just maybe, your next aha moment is waiting in a dream you haven't had yet. Good night, lovely thinker, and thank you for being here with me on Sleepcovery.